This is the St. John's and St. Ben's Career Resource Center's What Can I Do with a Career in Human Resources Career Exploration Series event. How this is going to work is that we have our 4 panelists here. They're going to be talking a little bit about what they're doing in HR right now, how their education helped them do that, any advice that they have for you for things that you should do before you graduate, those kinds of things. So to my right, we have Liz Bank from Thomson Reuters, followed by Dan Williams from Aerotek, Suzanne Tillman from the Girl Scouts of America, and on the far end, Jackie Sovick from the Minnesota Department of Corrections. They have some things in front of them as far as things they could talk about. Feel free to answer any of those questions or talk about whatever you want to, really. But go ahead, Liz.
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. It's great to be back on campus. I graduated from St. Ben's in 1997 with a degree in communications. So it's been a few years since I've been on campus, but excited to be back. When I think about my education here, I really think both my degree in communications as well as the leadership opportunities I had on campus. I participated in things like the Joint Event Council, and we started a on-campus television station, C6 TV, which I know was still running some movies in recent years. But both my leadership opportunities as well as my degree really did prepare me for the various roles I held. When I graduated, I did not know exactly what I wanted to do, and I actually took a job, a sales manager and training role with Dayton's at the time, now Macy's, but spent 3 years in sales management and led teams anywhere from 30 people to 75, and when I was wrapping up that portion of my career, I was driving a $12 million business through a team of 75. But it was at that point that I really reflected on what do I love about my job, and it was staffing, recruiting, helping people reach their goals, really energizing and driving employee engagement within my team, retention, making sure that we were retaining key talent. And I realized all of those areas were really key to a career in HR. And I was lucky to have an opportunity within Dayton's to express that interest and do a little networking with colleagues that I had worked with in HR. So I was able to join the HR team, and I spent 5 years supporting stores. So supporting any of the, at the time, Dayton stores from 600 to 1,200 employees, and really honed in my HR experience and learned more about that as a functional area, and got to a point where I wanted to try something new. And I joined the headquarters team as a compensation manager. So moved out of generalist work and into more of a specialist role. And in that compensation role, really got to stretch my analytical skills and spent a lot of time crunching numbers and working spreadsheets, but focused on our compensation programs for our stores employees, both commission and non-commission programs and incentive programs. Managed our performance management process, so both the creation of the guidelines, but also the administration of the program, and then did a little bit of relocation for folks that were moving around at the time. From there, I decided I missed that generalist work. I could only sit in front of a computer for so long before it got a little dull to me, and I decided to pursue other generalist opportunities. And I joined Thomson Reuters about 5 years ago. I work in our legal division, and in that period of time, I've worked with a number of different business units. What attracted me to that company was the HR structure was really focused on what we call a business partnership. So we're HRBPs or generalists that align by various business units, and we really work closely with our leaders in understanding what are their business strategies and their goals, and then we work to align the people strategies. So again, dabbling in employee relations, employee engagement, org structure, org design, working with all of our partners in the specialist functions, and being able to have a lot of variety in the work that I do. So today I work for a business unit that's called FindLaw, and we focus on developing marketing strategies, primarily online, for small solo law firms. And our HR team is 6, so we're a small piece of the larger business, but one of the unique things is we're a high-growth business, which is exciting in this economy to be part of a business that's growing. We've been able to grow our team year over year, the last few years, by 20%. So lots of recruiting, lots of career pathing. So every day is different, and that's what I love about my job. And one thing that just keeps me motivated and inspired is seeing others reach their goals. And because we are a part of a growing area of the business, there's lots of opportunity for movement, and we're in an area of the business that's constantly changing. Technology, obviously changes overnight, and that changes how we do business. So never a dull moment. So that's what I'm up to today, and I'll pass it over to you, Dan.
All right. I'm Dan Williams. I am also a graduate of St. John's. I graduated in 2009. I was class of 08, but went for the 5th year, which gives you an idea of how much I really knew what I wanted to do with myself. I ended up with a major in biology. Again, had no idea what I wanted to do with it when I graduated, had no idea that I would end up where I'm at. I graduated with a degree, and I kind of thought, well, I guess I should try to get a job in a lab, because that's what science people do. And ended up actually coming up and using the career networking, the files that they have at St. John's, and made a couple calls and ended up talking to Aerotek Scientific, and actually called to help get placement in a lab of some kind. And they wound up asking me if I thought of working there, and I said, "Oh, you guys have labs?" And they said, "No," as a recruiter. I said, "No, I guess I never thought about it, but I will." And so kind of took the job having no idea what it was actually even all about. I remember just called home and said, "Hey, I got a job as a recruiter." And I said, "What are you going to be doing?" And I said, "I have no idea, but I start Monday." But really, I really did like it, because a lot of the coursework and the things that I had done with my science degree, which I was interested in, helped me to really understand and grasp the job, the companies I was working with, the people I was working with, and kind of what their needs were, and what they were looking to do. And so I recruited for just under a year, and then moved into an account management role. And so our company is a little bit different than I think a traditional HR function. You can kind of think of Aerotek as almost an outsourced HR in a way. If a company has certain positions that they're looking to fill that they either don't have the manpower to recruit on, or are having difficulty finding, I now work with those companies and those people at those companies to help them find some of the right people, and then I manage the recruiters working within our company to help them go through our internal databases and networks and find the right people, and then bring those individuals to the other HR teams and to the companies that we're working with. We also help with some of the budgetary needs with companies. It's we do some consulting work with hiring solutions. Just how many people are we going to need? Here's what our project looks like. What's possible? Here's what our budget is. So it really has been a very interesting job and a great learning experience, because I've learned a lot about not only human resources and all the different functions and roles that they actually play. It's not just a hiring thing. It's a whole lot more than that. But I've also learned the business side from the sales perspective, and the personnel management, which I would have never guessed prior to working so closely with HR teams and with the hiring process that would be the case. But it's been, yeah, been a pretty cool experience, and I think definitely is a great career path because there's so many different avenues and channels that you can get into, and it's not, you know, you're not just sitting necessarily hiring people every day or firing people every day or having people, you know, processing payroll. There's so much that goes into the understanding of the business to it. As far as, you know, I guess what a typical day looks like in HR, like she said, it's you know, it's every day is different, which is, I think, a very exciting and fun part to the job because you're not going into the monotony of, you know, poring over data and looking for errors or, you know, counting parts or basic testing. I mean, you're every day you're talking with different people about different problems with different issues. I think the one thing you got to be ready to do is put in some hours. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I don't think I've worked 40 hours since I was in training. You know, it's
They're just
kind of
starting. Don't scare them yet.
well, yeah. Be afraid. No, but like I said, it's not monotonous, so the time passes a lot more quickly. I've had the 40-hour-a-week jobs where you're doing monotonous work, and I can easily say that working 50 to 60 hours some weeks goes so much faster than working 40 at a job that is not as, I guess, exciting, challenging, different. So I definitely think there's a lot of, you know, really cool aspects to a career in the field.
Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne Tillman. I'm an '02 grad of St. Ben's. Same thing, same story. I had no idea. I was a liberal studies major, and my focus was environmental studies. They didn't have the major when I was going to school. They do now, from my understanding. But I wanted to save the world one tree at a time, so that was kind of my focus, but I wasn't really sure how to do that. So I took a little bit of a non-traditional route in my career path. I had the opportunity to move overseas after I graduated, and basically I had fun for a little over a year. I worked for the government, and they kind of plopped me in southern Germany and said, go be a waitress at one of our R&R facilities and have some fun while you're at it. And I enjoyed myself thoroughly and really glad that I did it, and just kind of got that. I thought I would get it out of my system, the traveling bug, but it just, I think, made it worse, and I just want to travel more. But it allowed me some time to kind of think of what I wanted to do, and so came back stateside and thought I had it figured out, and still didn't. And it happened to be that Target was the first organization that called and offered me a job. I thought, great hometown organization, this would be perfect, so I accepted, and it was it was store support for the HR. So I was doing HR support for the stores, so everything from compensation to policy questions to you name it. We were helping them with pretty much anything. And I didn't know what HR was at that point, and so it was something where I got a lot of training and started getting into it, and I found it very interesting. There's so many components. HR is not a one-path field. There's so many components, and this was starting in that career, probably, I wouldn't have said this at the time, but it was probably the best thing for me because it allowed me to see all of those different facets. So I stayed with Target, and I started out at headquarters and did that for about a year, and I was one of the weird ones that wanted to transfer from headquarters into the stores. So I transitioned into the stores to do HR support in the stores, and I started at one of the smaller stores. We had about we fluctuated about 250 to 275 employees, and it really was a generalist role. You're managing everything from performance management to pay to you're helping with the overall sales of the store to events to morale to you name it. You have your hands in every single pot, and so that gave me a good additional information or additional experience on kind of what the HR field was like. And then I moved into a larger store and saw that different scale of dealing with a larger store, and also getting into the supervision piece as well, and overseeing a team, and did that for a couple more years. And then I was looking for something different. I knew HR was a field that I wanted to stay in, but I didn't really know. I knew the big corporation wasn't what I wanted, but to be honest, at that point, I don't think I could have told you what a nonprofit was either, other than they were supposed to be people that did good things for communities. So I started to look into things, started talking to people, and then found some various avenues for HR positions within the nonprofit world and came across the Girl Scouts. And really, I was blown away by, I mean, obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but most people know the Girl Scouts, know kind of what the mission is, what they stand for, and I thought, wow, how cool to work for there. So I started with them as a generalist and worked my way up to a manager, and now I'm the HR director for the Girl Scouts. And it's been a great experience. The nonprofit world is tremendous. You really get to touch every facet, and it's nice because you get the kind of corporate component where you do have to manage you're managing payroll, you're managing performance management, you're managing morale, the overall culture, the boring stuff like the policies and all that stuff. You have everything under your realm, but you also get the cool aspect of being a part of the mission as well, so you get a lot of opportunities to be able to help drive that mission, which a lot of people that work for nonprofits are there. Not there for the pay, that's for sure. They're there for the mission work and things. So it's really exciting, but there really is no typical day. It still is very much a generalist role, which I really enjoy because there isn't that typical day. You really can have a day where you have your list of, okay, I need to talk to A, Y, or X, Y, and Z. I need to send out this email, so on and so forth, and it could look completely different because you've had a manager stop by and say, I have this employee who is, running down the hallways cursing, what do I do, because they don't have any idea. So it's very exciting. And for me, the biggest thing with HR, and it really depends on kind of the avenue that you get into, is I went into it because it was the first job that called. I stayed with it because I love the people aspect of it. It's really cheesy, it's really cliche, and I get that, but I really like the avenue of being able to help people because things like pay, their benefits, all of those pieces that you interact with in HR, that's a big deal to people. And so I like to be able to help them, to answer their questions, whatever they need, offering support. It was, Erica had said, some people make the comment of, well, I have a psych major, I don't really know what else to do with that other than go be a psychologist or whatever. HR is an excellent field for a psych major because there's a lot of times where you feel like you are their shrink, people come to you to vent, they come to crying, every emotion that runs the gamut. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. There's so many components of HR that you can go into, but like I say, I stick around because of the people piece, and HR is an area that can be very impactful for the staff that you work with.
Hi, I'm Jackie Sovick. I currently work for State of Minnesota Department of Corrections. I knew I wanted to go into management, I just didn't know which area. I had a work-study job in the theater and thought that was really cool, so I did an internship at the Children's Theater in St. Cloud, found out that wasn't what I wanted to do at all. So then a classmate of mine came back and told me about her HR internship, and I said, wow, that sounds really cool, it sounds like something I could do. I started applying for HR jobs, and I was lucky enough, I got a generalist job with the Shakopee Correctional Facility, the Shakopee Prison, as a generalist job. So what was really nice about that is, it was the full gamut of things as they were talking, insurance and pay and anybody who would come through the door, I would assist them. And there were 3 of us in the office, about 200 staff, so really got a feel for it. And then I was promoted to a professional level, and then I decided to go to our headquarters, our central office, in an HRIS job, which was developing programs for our HR staff, electronic job postings, because we were doing print off the hard copy and posting on the board, so what could I do to move us forward? And that was a great experience, and then I went into a staffing job as a temporary stint to try that out, and found out that wasn't my niche. It wasn't what I liked to do. It was very interesting, but wasn't where I wanted to be. Then this labor relations job came up, and I found out that this was my true love. This is what I really like to do. Labor relations for the state of Minnesota is unique in that you have the legislative body, but you also have the state of Minnesota that's run by one agency, and then all of the other agencies, several agencies, fall under their umbrella. So you can't just make decisions to change union contract language because there are many other agencies that are also impacted by these decisions. So it becomes challenging in that way, and that's what I love. Typical day, I never know when a union member is going to call me and say, do you know this is going on? You're violating the contract. We want to file a grievance on you, you know, and you work through it. You talk with them. You have to have communication skills and, you know, be able to articulate and say this is why we're doing what we're doing. So I have truly loved HR. I've been in it since '98, and right now, today at least, I don't want to go anywhere else. So one thing about the government is, and state employment is you can go to any other agency. You can go to agriculture, human services, you know, and transfer and see all the different agencies. So it's one of the positive things that I've seen with that. So other than that, I'm very thankful for my education through St. Ben's because I truly believe it helped me get to where I wanted to be today. So that's about what I have to say.
All right, so we'll open the panel now to questions. So if any of you guys have any questions, just go ahead and raise your hand and they'll call on you and they'll answer it.
What would you say is the most rewarding part of your job?
For me, it's the people. It really is. You'll have a lot of people who, well, again, depending on what line you go into or what type of HR that you go into, but you can have everybody, you know, anything from, I just helped a woman who just found out that she was pregnant. She had no idea, what does this mean for her job, her insurance, what does that look like? You know, those are big concerns, you know, for females in the workplace and on what that looks like from the work perspective. Walking her through and seeing, having her leave with that sense of calm, because really that should be the last thing on her mind when looking at having a child. And so really you get to help people a lot in the HR field, and for me at least that's the most rewarding thing, because I'm not saying it's all roses, because we do have to fire people, we do have to give them the tough messages of not performing and things like that, but you have the opportunity of being very impactful from the people perspective in the HR role.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's actually a fairly thankless department of a company, because you're not technically a producer of the company. You're not selling anything. You're not generating revenue. So a lot of times there's not a lot of thank yous that necessarily come your way, but you do get, like you said, to have a very large impact on people. You know, I remember the day I remember a specific day that it kind of bought me in, was I had placed a guy at work, and you know, everybody you get a job or move from one job to another, it doesn't always matter, but you know, he called and he said, I just want to thank you. He said, this job saved my house and my family. His wife was about to leave and they were going to lose their house. And that's a very direct result of something that I was able to help with and our company was able to do for him, which was, I thought, really a really cool thing that this could do. And even the firings and the hard conversations and the times, you can still have a very positive impact with those. I mean, not necessarily an immediate positive impact, but if you go about a lot of those difficult discussions the right way and actually work on and make sure you're communicating effectively and that you're sending the right message, you can at least improve that person for the next endeavor that they're going to have. You know? So I think you can always try to have a positive impact on things, even if it's not immediate, which is cool.
Yeah. And I would say similarly, it's impacting people, but really solving complex problems, and then having that impact both individuals, but also the team. And I think that gives you a sense of accomplishment, knowing that you do make a big difference, and you do contribute in intangible ways to the larger mission or goals, in my case of the company. And I think doing that while creating a really fun place to work and just never losing sight that, you know, everyone works because they need to have a living to support their families and you know, but that we spend the majority of time there. And so if we can do something to make a difference and make it fun and rewarding, You know, I appreciate that and find that rewarding myself.
I find working through issues kind of like yours. Employee comes to you and, you know, they're very upset with their supervisor and very angry and they believe that they're accurate and they're right in their position, and talking them through it and then having them understand the issues and helping them get through their issue really helps. That's what I appreciate.
Hi, thank you all for coming in today. I'm a senior this year, so I'm wondering, like, what kind of work experience or internship or volunteering would be really helpful in the field of HR in order to go into it?
We have people join us in a number of ways. So both, you know, internships and generalist type roles, but also joining in learning and development or recruiting are typical paths people come into our organization. Gives access to some of the foundation to learn some of the core skills and how to navigate the broader company. So there's a number of different ways I've seen people join our HR community.
Internships are great. You kind of get a feel. I think it's hard. There hopefully are no professors in here. Classroom information obviously is great knowledge to have, but I think until you really get your hands wet and what the actual job is, you don't know. You don't know. And so I think internships are very helpful from your perspective, because you can see what those different facets are, and you might get in there and say, I hate benefits, or I hate comp, or I hate, you know, recruiting, whatever that looks like. But you can start to hone in on what it is that you really have a feel for. And the other thing with internships, it's a foot in the door with the organization. And so it might not be something where you're starting that internship that they have an open opportunity, but if you blow them away, most organizations, barring any sort of, you know, budgetary constraints or stuff, but if they see a stellar employee, they're not going to let you go, regardless of whether you're an intern or whether you're a senior level. If they see potential in you, they're going to find a spot for you to be able to stick around. So it's a great in. The other thing, especially, you know, if you're a senior and you're looking at, you know, how to kind of break in, is take a look at the networking opportunities, especially within the Metro. There's a lot of HR professional groups that you can become a part of. Whether that's via LinkedIn, whether that's via actual membership within the professional agencies, where they have a ton of opportunities that you can come together for meetings, just information, gaining knowledge, whatever. But that networking is huge, because these days it's about who you know, not what you know. So I think it's a good opportunity. The more you can get out there and kind of talk to people about their roles within our organizations and get yourself out there, that it goes a long way.
I guess my internship, as I said, was in the children's theater, and then my work study job was theater, but I wanted an HR job. So what I had to focus on is what skills did I learn during those internships and then build those references, like you were saying. So build those references so you can say, call this person. They can show that I was dedicated, on time, had the skills, had the writing skills, and those different things that you can bring forward that apply to any job. So.
Yeah, I think they're right. I mean, I didn't have any internships. I didn't have very much experience that was really even related to what I decided to do at all. I mean, I think really what kind of helped me succeed and helped me get into it was the fact that I had always had jobs where I had dealt a lot with people and just worked with people, be it, you know, I was a waiter and I was, you know, worked for some trucking companies, and, you know, I had sold insurance for a little while, and you know, in doing all those things, you know, that's what kind of allowed me to become a recruiter. And so I think what she said is, I think that probably is, if you don't have, because I mean, having the internships, having all those things is clearly the best way to go about it, but not everybody gets an internship. That's just sort of the facts of life. I mean, and so I think by doing those things, I think recruiting is typically a very good way in, because it doesn't really require much in the way of prerequisites, other than you're comfortable talking to people, you're comfortable calling people, and you're comfortable learning the business and the jobs and what managers need from you.
All of you said that a
found in my career, it's knowing your resources and where to get the information. So, you know, employment law changes all of the time, and in the organization I work for, we're global and have offices, you know, around the world, but throughout the states too, and so there's local laws and country laws that change how we need to do things. So I have found it's really about knowing your resources and where to get the information than it is memorizing or having specific expertise that you just draw instantly upon. And that could be different depending on the role.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I sort of am more of a hybrid of an HR. I wouldn't consider myself an HR person. I mean, we have an internal HR department at our company that I'm not a part of. But I still, you know, so our HR guidelines are going to be a lot different than internally than another company because of the fact that our employees are working on site at other companies. And so there's other issues that I have to be aware of for a lot of my clients that aren't actually as developed in their policies and their procedures. I have a lot of clients that don't necessarily have, if they have an HR department, it's maybe one person. And it's, I mean, not every company has well-developed large HR policies and companies, so I have to go in almost as, and that's where the consulting part of my job comes in, where I have to kind of come to them and say, okay, you know, when we're talking about interview questions or things they're going to ask, I have to say, well, you can't really ask that. That's highly illegal. Or, you know, if you want to ask that, fine, but you might get sued. And so it's not, I didn't have to sit through, you know, weeks of training and poring over, you know, stacks of government volumes telling us what we can and can't say. A lot of it is you know, companies will typically do, you know, you'll have seminars where if you're in HR, you go to places to learn a block of information and then take that back and put that in and apply that information and new law and code into the current policies that you have. And so I think a bigger part of it would be more the implementation than, a larger part is the implementation over the learning, because it's usually changes based on the way your company's structured.
And I think it depends on the type of role that you're in. If you're in more of a generalist role, it's going to be a little bit more, again, you have to know the parameters that you have to operate in from the legal perspective, because that's a good chunk of what the HR, if there is an HR department, that's what the organization looks to them for. Part of what they look to them for is to make sure that how they're operating isn't in any sort of violation when it comes to employment law or any of those pieces. So I think it really depends on the type of role that you're in, because you could be in a comp analyst role where you're looking at compensation for a large organization, and it is probably pretty scripted in terms of here's your comp ratios, here's where you need to be, so on and so forth, and it's more of like some number crunching, but you're still very much in the HR department in terms of figuring out the compensation pieces. So I think it really depends on the role that you play within the HR department or within the HR scope within the organization to determine whether it's a little bit more black and white and specific and has a book to go by, or if it's more of the knowing your resources, knowing where you need to kind of finesse or kind of off the cuff or whatever. It really is dependent on the type of role that you end up in.
I think it's all about your resources. You have an employee come to you and ask you a question, you're like, okay, now I know the answer, I'll document it for the next time, and the next employee comes, and they say a little something different, it's back to square one and having to research, so you never know, you know, it's never a straight, this is what the answer is for every question. So I'm always looking at the resources and seeing what's out there and how to answer these questions, so, because they are continually changing, so.
You said that your degree was in communication. Do you feel like that has helped you, and if so, how?
Yeah. I was reflecting on that question and realized, oh, it has been a few years. Let me remember what my courses were. But it definitely has helped in terms of understanding my audience, thinking in terms of being able to influence and send, you know, core messages. developing communication plans for an organization. So it has helped in many, many ways. It's probably so many, it's hard to narrow them down. But I think, one of the things I appreciated about the experience was the fact that our programs were liberal arts and nature, and so you got broad depth of focus in whatever your discipline was. And so I think that gives a lot of things to draw upon when you go to apply it in the real world.
In this field of work, is it common for people to go to grad school, or is it something that you just kind of, you find a job and then you kind of work your way up?
I think it probably varies. I've seen a little bit of everything.
So what would you go to grad school for, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people get their master's in human resources, their MBA. From a business partner role, it's important to understand all facets. In the HR community, the SHRM certification is also well recognized, so a lot of people will focus on getting their HR certification through SHRM versus advanced education, but I really think I've seen a little bit of everything.
One thing I can tell you just from what I do is I would advise waiting until you find somewhere to work before pursuing the advanced education, because it's very expensive, and the companies like to see practical, real-world experience. You can have all the degrees in the world, but I think with this type of career, as much as anything, there's so much that's just got to be on the job learning, because you can't prepare for people. I mean, people are always a variable.
Well, and where you work might pay for it.
That's the other
I mean, to
thing.
be honest.
Yeah.
There's not that many HR, because you can get a master's in HR, like Liz said. There's not many schools that offer it right now, and the ones that do, like Carlson is one that offers it. It's very expensive to go to Carlson, and it's very tough to get into, so if you can get an organization that has tuition reimbursement things that can help pay for that. Not a lot of people agree with me when I say this out loud, but the PHR is one of the certifications that you can get from SHRM, and I please correct me if I'm wrong, but at least from a personal perspective, I almost felt that it would have been helpful to know about that test like my senior year, or even like my very first year out of college, because you're still in that study mode. The PHR, it's a professional and human resource certification. It is viewed very highly, especially if you're just coming out of college. But the nice thing is it's kind of a different way of thinking, and when you're in the mode that you guys are in right now, it's studying, you know how to take tests, you know how those pieces work. I think it is helpful. I had a journalist that started with us a couple years ago. She was a fresh grad, and she had taken it as part of her senior year, and she found that tremendously helpful to have that, because you're in that mode, you're in that academic mode, and it just gets tougher and tougher when you get into the work environment, because you become a little more skewed on the policies of the organization that you work for, or the state policies and things, where these certifications are at the federal level. So I have heard people who are fresh out of college saying that that's helpful to try to undertake, but I agree with the larger the masters and things like that, to see if you get into an organization that might help pay for it.
Yeah, to clarify, I would say the certifications are with anything, if there's extra certification or small pieces of knowledge that you can show that you have more depth in, that's great. I was speaking specifically to the advanced degrees, the MBAs, the PhDs. They're great to have, and they're going to serve you very well, I think, in the long run, but it's not something that you want to just do back to back to back all at once, because you can price yourself out of a lot of jobs and scare people.
Yeah.
I think he's correct 100%. I got my master's, I think I went back when I was age 30, and wow, out of the studying mode. But I had classmates who had just graduated, and my experience in the HR community, and was able to apply real life experience, and wow, this is what it's like when you do a project, you can apply it to work. And so it went a lot better now that I waited, and it was just by a fluke that I did that. I got an organizational management with an emphasis in HR. I didn't want to narrow myself into HR completely because who knows what the future brought. So keep your opportunities open and definitely.
How many of you are seniors? Oh, shoot, okay, good chunk of you. All right. Are you all looking at the HR field, or are you just kind of checking things out? I won't hold you to it, I promise. A mix.
It's a good answer either way.
Yeah, can't go wrong, I won't judge. HR? Yeah. Yeah.
That's smart. I wish I would have done that.
I have a question for you, Suzanne. How is like Target compared to like the nonprofit world?
Night and day. No, it is very different. There's a lot of pieces that I was really glad for the experience with Target, and it really opened up a lot of doors for me. I have found myself personally, I really like the nonprofit a little bit better. Obviously, we're smaller than Target, so it's a different, it's not necessarily comparing apples to apples, but I like it in the aspect that it keeps me in that generalist type of role where I really am doing everything. In nonprofits, for the most part, unless you're in a huge nonprofit, or even a school probably looks a little bit different because they have a little bit different structures, even though they're considered nonprofits. Most are going to have very small HR departments. It's nice because you get to do everything. So while I have a team, we're a small team. There's 3 of us total. We each have focuses, but really you could be doing anything. I may have to run a payroll, or I may be calling someone about some phone screens for a job interview, or I may be talking to the CEO about our next strategy with the upcoming budget year, whatever that looks like. So I really like it from that perspective, that you still get your hands in everything. And I like it because like I said before, most people that go into a nonprofit go into it for the mission, and a lot of things that we hear when we go through the phone screens, and I said the same thing in mine, so I shouldn't roll my eyes, but they want to do something for the community. They want to do better and try to help things, and so it's nice working with a group of folks who kind of have that mission. Now, you can work for a for-profit and still have that vision and find opportunities for volunteering and stuff like that, but I find it kind of fun, especially with the Girl Scouts. Like, I was out at one of the cookie sites helping, some brownies sell cookies last year. So it just kind of has some cool aspects like that. Now, there's trade-offs. You don't have a lot of the perks that you might have at a Target, where you could head downtown headquarters and you have a whole restaurant there. You have events up the wazoo. I mean, shoot, they had, Adele there last year doing a concert for their national sales meeting. Yeah, we don't have that. And so it's weighing out some of those perks that they kind of the fun pieces that they can provide at a larger organization like that, versus kind of some of those other components of a smaller place where you have a little bit more hands-on, you know everybody. So it's just kind of weighing it out. But I like the niche better in the nonprofit personally, just for a lot of reasons, but just so that you can kind of have your hands in everything.
Anyone else got any burning questions?
All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. The panelists will stick around for a little bit if you have any one-on-one questions, but otherwise, we have refreshments over there. Be sure to fill out the evaluations if you can, but otherwise, thank you for coming, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.